Good morning. Today we are going to be learning about motifs in Of Mice and Men, as you saw in today's objective, which is we will analyze motif in the novella Of Mice and Men by identifying patterns in the plot. So, if you don't remember, a motif is a recurring symbol or idea within the text that often builds towards a theme. We already did this several times throughout the books and stories we've read. The first motif we're going to look at is sacrifice. Sacrifice is when you give something up for the sake of something else. The two kinds of sacrifice we're going to look at is selfish sacrifice and selfless sacrifice, right? So in one case, you gain something more important for yourself, right? This quote, you sacrifice the few to save the many, that kind of embodies it, right? Like you sacrifice for the sake of benefit. And then the selfless kind is when someone else benefits, right? The greatest sacrifice is when you sacrifice your own happiness for the sake of someone else. So we have selfish sacrifice and selfless sacrifice. Those are the two sacrifices that we're going to analyze in the book. And we're going to start with George. George's sacrifice is introduced in chapter 1. His is a selfless sacrifice, right? When I think of the swell time I could have had without you, I go nuts. I never get no peace. George talks about how if he didn't have Lenny, he'd be having a good time like all the other ranchers, all the other migrant workers who don't have families and who can make their money and then go out and have a good time and party and drink and be with women. So he really is sacrificing himself for the sake of caring for Lenny 24 hours a day. Lenny has become his entire life, and that's a really selfless sacrifice. Then we have Slim. Slim makes a sacrifice that a lot of us don't notice in chapter 2. Right? He talks about his dog who had puppies, and these puppies come up a lot. He gives one puppy to Lenny. He offers to give a puppy to Candy. But in chapter 2, he says, "She slang her puppies last night," said Slim. 9 of them. I drowned 4 of them right off. She couldn't feed that many. So Slim makes this decision where my dog can't feed 9 puppies. I'm just going to kill 4 of them instead of risking my dog dying and me being upset over my dog dying and random puppies dying. He wants to be the one to make the decision. Now, this was something that was common practice at the time. We're not saying Slim's a bad guy, but this is an example of sacrifice that Steinbeck sticks in there. It's not necessary to have this one random line there, except to establish this motif of sacrifice happening, right? And what we're starting to see is where George made this selfless sacrifice, right? That kind of establishes him as a hero in the story. Slim makes this selfish sacrifice, right? Which we're seeing the oppression of the weak, right? He probably took the weakest runt of the litter puppies and drowned them to save the strong puppies, right? So we're starting to see the development of the strong characters in this novel really having power over the weak characters. And we saw that with Curly starting a fight with Lenny earlier on. Now, we have Carlson, right? As we know in chapter 3, Carlson argues and fights to put down Candy's dog, and ultimately he does win, right? If you want me to, I'll put the old devil out of his misery right now and get it over with. Ain't nothing left for him. Can't eat, can't see, can't even walk without hurting. So Carlson and the other ranchers see no purpose in this dog because he's old and weak and doesn't serve them, right? There's no benefit that they can get, and therefore they want to put the dog out of his misery, and they do win. So again, we see this motif of sacrifice that also does lead into that same theme, right, of the strong oppressing the weak, right, keeping down the weak, holding down the weak. Now, one other example of sacrifice that we might not have caught on to so quickly is Candy. I ought to have shot that dog myself, George. I should ought to let no stranger shoot my dog, right? So Candy makes a selfish sacrifice where he lets Carlson take his dog out to be shot. He kind of sits in his bunkhouse in his bed, rolled up quiet, and that's really a selfish moment for Candy where like it was his job to take his dog out and shoot his dog and make a selfless sacrifice, right? Hurt himself because it would be so painful for him to shoot his dog. But then his dog, the last person his dog would see before dying, is this person who he loved, Candy, his master. Instead, Candy was selfish, stayed in his bed, right? And made the sacrifice of letting someone else shoot his dog. And that